Who else would like to read? Anybody else would like to read? No? Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji, I can go if you don't mind.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
I can read also afterwards.
Mansatriyet dikshasti chet pranatiti mishra bhajant misham shunyashya bhajan vigmanya manya ninda dishishunya hridam ipsita sangha labdhya. Yep.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yes, Rasada Krishna Prabhu, you want to read too?
Krishneti yasya giritam manasridhyatya dikshaste chet pranatibhishcha bhajantanam isham susrasya bhajana vijnam ananyam anya nindatati sunya hridam ipshita sangha labdaya.
Thank you. Yes. So 3 categories of devotees are being mentioned in this verse. Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta. One should mentally honor the devotee who chants the holy name of the Lord, of Lord Krishna. That's the first category. Dikshasti chet pranatibhischa bhajanta misham. One should offer humble obeisances to the devotee who has undergone spiritual initiation, diksha. And the third category, Shushrushraya bhajan vigyam ananyamanya nindadi shunya hirdam ipshita sangalabdhai. That a person who's he's of the topmost level, he's an Uttam Adhikari, we'll go through the 3 categories in detail. So that person, he's completely devoid of any propensity for criticizing others and he's completely dedicated to Krishna. We should engage in service to that devotee. So obviously we are mentally honoring him, we are also offering him obeisances, and in addition to that, we are also faithfully serving that pure devotee. That's the essence of this verse. So let's see. So Prabhupada divides the purport in 3 parts. He describes who are the 3 different types of devotees: Kanishta, Madhyam, Uttam Adhikari. Prabhupada goes over the process of initiation briefly, and then he describes life after Diksha. What are the qualifications once you have got Diksha? How do you behave? What is the way you present yourself? These 3 main aspects are being covered in Prabhupada's purport. So coming to the 3 types of devotees. So Prabhupada, right in the beginning of the purport, he says, in order to intelligently apply the 6-fold loving reciprocations mentioned in the previous verse, one must select proper persons with careful discrimination. That's a very important word Prabhupada is using here, discrimination. There is a judgment and there is discrimination, and there is a fine difference in both of them. Judgment is based on mental speculation, whereas discrimination that Prabhupada is highlighting here is based on Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Okay, if you can think, right, somebody can say that we can judge Bhim by saying that, oh, Bhim used to eat a lot. That could be a judgment. Oh, Bhim eats a lot. But then if you talk to his peers and his family members, you'll get a completely different view. So he has what they call that Vrikagni. Now, there are 9 types of fire in the Ayurvedic system described within our body, and so he had Vrikagni. There was a Vrika means a wolf. So we all have a different type of fire. It's called Jathagni. So he had a different type of fire. So when you get those details coming from the right people and right Shastra, then we won't judge him. Then it'll be more of a, then you can discriminate. Why does he eat more? So that's a discrimination, right? So similarly, we also have judgments around people who are surrounding us. We have devotees, our God's siblings. So judging is to be avoided completely, and there should be no sense of superiority or inferiority complex. The next verse goes more in detail about that. So we usually, so this verse is teaching us how to discriminate fit candidates and where do they stand in their bhakti process, and how do we have a reciprocation with them, how do we develop a relationship with them. So right, whoever kind of person you associate with, those are the qualities you will get So we have to be careful whom we are associating with. For that, we need this discrimination coming from Sadhu, Shastra, and Guru, right? And so we'll go further in this. So let's see. Three types of devotees: Kanishtha, Madhyama, and Uttama. So we'll go over each one of them. We'll talk about how they um, how they how they do these different things, dealing with devotees, other people, what is their behavior, how do they preach, and what kind of a Shraddha do they have. Shraddha means faith. What kind of a faith do they have, and what do they think about themselves? That's also important. In addition to that, there are Shastric evidence for all these three. I put it here. I'm not going to go into details of these. So this is something for all of you to read once you're done here. You don't necessarily have to go. You can always read the purport. That's very good. But even if you don't want to read the purport, just go and read the translations. That will give you more details about these different types of devotees. How do they behave, and those details. And so Srimad Bhagavatam is the Nava Yogendras are speaking in the 11th canto, and they are giving these. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Madhya Leela, Mahaprabhu is giving the three categories of these devotees. So you'll get more details around that. So let's start with the Kanishtha-dhikari. So Kanishtha-dhikari is the lowest on the rung of the ladder. Okay, and his Shraddha is very, very fragile. It's shaky. One day, if he listens from a impersonalist, probably the impersonalist is a good speaker, and he will get attracted to that impersonalist. And the next day he comes to the temple, he listens to a devotee, and he gets attracted to the devotee. But his Shraddha is very fragile. He's not fixed. Okay, right? So so that's the beginning of his. That is his Shraddha. Then what does he think about himself or herself? So that person is proud of their material qualifications. They consider themselves as great devotees. So the pride which has come through, probably many lives, it's been accumulating. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains how do you come to that point of pride. We give up Shastric injunctions, and then pride comes. From pride comes envy, and then envy manifests itself as fault finding. So the whole process happens, and that's where the pride comes in, thinking that I am a great devotee. So the self-concept of a Kanishtha-dhikari is that he thinks that I am a great devotee. But then Krishna tells us, and Mahaprabhu quotes Krishna in Chaitanya Charitamrita, saying that Ye me bhakta jana partha, na me bhaktas te jana. That those who are my direct devotees are actually not my devotees, but those who are devotees of my servant are factually my devotees. Krishna says that or Mahaprabhu quotes in Madhya Leela in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the stress is being given that you have to be a servant of a servant. Das, das, and nudas. Mahaprabhu exemplified that for us. But then a Kanishta devotee thinks that I am a great devotee. Okay. Then his chanting. How does he chant? So he's chanting on a stage of Namaparad. So there are three stages of chanting, as we know. There is Namaparad, there is Namabhas, and there is Shuddhanam. So the person who is in Kanishta level, he's doing Namaparad. He's committing offenses, but somehow he chants. That's the process that's going on, right? So that's his chanting aspect. Okay. Then how does he deal with the deity in the temple? How does he deal with the Lord? So he or she thinks that God is only in the temple. And whatever I'm quoting whatever I'm saying, this is coming from these verses that I have put there. And so you can also write down if you're taking notes. But yeah, most of it is coming from there, those verses. So he's dealing with the Lord is that he thinks that God is only in the temple. He or she cannot perceive God in other living entities. Right? So behaves good in the temple, but behaves bad outside. Right? And he or she might even have an abominable secret life. So he just thinks that I have to be good in the temple, outside it doesn't matter. So that's the way he looks at the Lord, which is that part that he's seeing the deities and he thinks God is there. That is good. So it's not that these Kanishtas are to be condescended upon, and so they're not supposed to be looked down upon. But it's just talking about discriminating, understanding which devotee stands where. Then how does he deal with devotees? So that Kanishtha-dhikari, he competes with other devotees. So because in this material world, we have been so used to a race. We have been so used to a race in this material world that we feel that in the spiritual world also we are in a race. Who does better than other? Can I do this better than other? Sometimes when we get initiated, I feel that my guru is better than others, or my god brothers or my god siblings are more important than other people in this world. So this Kanishta-adhikari, he or she shows disrespect and quarrels with other devotees. That's the way he or she deals with devotees. Right? And then how does this person deal with innocent people who are not associated with bhakti or who are not familiar with bhakti? So a bigger point is that this person doesn't even know who is innocent and who is envious. Right? So I have those two categories, dealing with innocent people and envious. So Kanishta-adhikari cannot make that discrimination. He doesn't know who is innocent and envious. So their preaching method is very, very pompous. They show off. Right? They sometimes they value non-devotional qualities more. Probably cleanliness, for example. And so that those things overweigh their respect for devotees sometimes. So their discriminatory power is very, very low at this moment. And as I said, for preaching activities, they preach very pompously. And what's more is that they are very argumentative. They argue with people. If somebody does not accept the viewpoint that he or she is presenting, the Kanishta-adhikari is presenting, he or she argues with other people and tries to present themselves as superior. Right? And as it said, that there is no better way of losing friends than trying to prove them wrong. So that's what a Kanishta-adhikari does. He shows superiority, and in his mind he feels, okay, I have proven myself, but that in that whole process we have let go of some devotees who could have been connected to Krishna, some innocent people. Right? And many a times it happens. And I know many years ago I heard a story where there were these two brahmacharis and they were going door to door distributing books. They knocked at one door and the person opened up, and he was having some personal problems at home, so he just politely refused, and he was closing the door, but those two brahmacharis didn't let him close the door. He said, "Oh, at least touch the book. At least touch the book. At least give some donation.
I don't hear any.
Sankirtan Prabhu, you can't hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear us, Sankirtan Prabhu? No, you can't hear us. So just give me a minute. I can connect Sankirtan Prabhu on phone and he can at least listen. Just give me 1 second.
Hello?
Thanks. Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, so yes, so Kanishta-adhikari, we're talking about Kanishta-adhikari. Sorry for the interruption. So we talked about his preaching activities. Their voice. I was telling the story of the two brahmacharis. So they just kept pestering that person, and the person got so angry that he just shut the door on them, and then he was a regular at the temple, but then he never came back to the temple again. So sometimes by our activities, we can push away innocent people who have a potential connection with Krishna. So that's an attitude of a Kanishta Adhikari. Then, what is the behavior of this Kanishta Adhikari? Right. So, the behavior of a Kanishta Adhikari is that he is he's a materialistic devotee, right? He has those materialistic conceptions in his mind deeply rooted, but then he or she presents themselves as having some, they want to present themselves as better because they still have that materialistic rat race mentality, so they still want to present themselves as better. So they present themselves as they have some taste, and they have reached some bhava, so all that kind. So they try to present themselves as that. And Prabhupada calls such people as Prakarta Sahajiyas. Sahajiyas we talked about earlier in one of the classes. So Sahajiyas are the ones. Sahajiyas are the ones that they present. They think that all these rules regulations are useless. Oh, I'm in love with Krishna, and that's more than enough for me. So Prakarta Sahajiyas are those who are pretentious. So Prabhupada calls them, they are called Sahajiyas because they think that bhakti is very easy. So that's the behavior of a materialistic devotees. They have very low philosophical understanding. They invest a lot in rituals also, and their Shraddha is very weak. Any little disturbance in their life, they see some mismanagement in the temple, or as I was saying, they see some atheistic people giving a class, or some misery comes in their life, some death or some pain, and they suddenly lose faith immediately, and they become offensive to Krishna, right? So that's the attitude of this materialistic devotee. Then another important thing is that, as I just mentioned, that they are ritualistic. They're too much focused on rituals. And there's this famous story about this priest, right? He used to do a lot of fire sacrifices, and one day, and he had a lot of disciples who used to follow him, and they would learn that process from him. One day he was doing a yajna, and there was a cat that was disturbing him. So that cat keep coming into that yajna sthali, and so he kept on pushing the cat away, and he told his disciple to put the cat out, but the cat kept coming back. So what he did, he took the cat and he put the cat in a basket, and then after that he did his yajna. Many years passed, and then his disciples, when they took over and they were about to do a yajna, everything was ready. One of the disciples stood up and said, "Oh, we are missing the cat. Our teacher taught us that a cat has to be in the basket there." So it became a ritual then. And we have many such rituals in our lives which we have no clue where they're coming from. We just keep following them. So these people are ritualistic in nature. Sometimes when you go to the temple, they say, "Oh, this is the place to remove shoes," and you might say, "Oh, I removed them in the car." Oh, no, you have to remove the shoes here. So some people are ritualistic and some sort of obsessive compulsive natures. So that's the nature of such people. Okay, and then we have two the scriptural references you can look at: 11:47 and the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 15.106. That's the Kanishta Adhikari platform. Okay, so and then how should we reciprocate, right? So that's the first line of the verse we are reading today. Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyet. Mentally offer them respect. And the reason why Rupa Goswami is asking us to do that, even for these the lowest rung of that ladder, because that person has gone through many births to come here, right? Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschidati siddhaye yatataamapi siddhanam kaschin mam vedi tatvata. Krishna says that Manushyanam sahasreshu, out of millions and millions of people, one comes to me and becomes my devotee. So if a person is even chanting Krishna's name once and he's coming to the temple, that person has gone through lots and lots of pious activities, penances, austerities to come to this position. That is why we should offer them mentally respect. But as I am also a neophyte, I don't necessarily go and engage with them unnecessarily, right? So we keep a distance, but we are not disrespectful to them. Okay, so we'll now jump on to Madhyama. Any questions on Kanishta before we go on to Madhyama? No? Okay. Madhyam Adhikari. Their Shraddha is very strong. Okay. Their Shraddha is strong. They're not necessarily very strong in scriptural references. They don't, let's say they're having a discussion with somebody, they cannot quote scriptural references. And so they're slightly low on knowledge, but their faith is strong. Shraddha is strong. And then they have a very good self-concept is that I'm just trying to be a servant of the devotees. That person, he or she has the awareness and the value of Vaishnavas, considers himself or herself as a struggling devotee. So that's a very good quality to have, right? That we are a servant of the devotees, we're trying to serve here, that the service mentality keeps us in a good position. Okay. Where does his chanting stand? His chanting is at a Nama Bhas stage. So the word Nama, so the first one was Nama Aparad. So Nama is holy name, Aparad is we are doing offenses. Then is Nama Bhas, holy name Abhas. Abhas in Sanskrit means to have a faint perception. For example, even though the sun does not come out, we see that it starts getting brighter. So that's the sense of a Nama Abhas. There is some Abhas there. Right. So even if we are able to listen to one mantra with full attention, we are at a Namabhas stage. Understand that. And I gave the analogy of the sun, so you can consider all the three, right? There is Nama Prad is that the sun is not at all out, it's dark. Nama Bhas is that the sun, you can't see the sun, but you can see the light of it. Then Nama Shuddha Nam is that the sun is bright out there and everything is clear to you. So different stages of chanting. Okay, so so the Madhyam Adhikari, he's doing it at Namabhas, and there is a good probability that he can also reach Shuddha Nama. Okay, how does he deal with deities and the Lord? So he loves the deities, he befriends devotees, and he shows compassion to innocents and neglects the envious. That's the 11th canto, 2nd chapter, and verse number 46. Right? That is Prema Maitri Kripopeksha Ya Karoti Sa Madhyama. So the Madhyam Adhikari has, he loves the deities, he befriends devotees, and he's compassionate to innocent people, and then he neglects the envious. Okay? So that's the way he deals with devotees, innocent people, and envious. So he's at a level higher than the Kanishta Adhikari because he knows how to discriminate between innocent people and the envious ones. And he or she purposefully ignores, not necessarily ignores, but stays away from people who are envious, because that can affect our consciousness also, and we don't have that. I don't have that capacity to convince somebody if the person is envious. So that's not a quality that a Madhyam Adhikari has, necessarily. And his or her preaching activities, I mentioned that he is convinced of Krishna consciousness, he has faith, his faith is strong, no doubt, but may or may not give convincing arguments when he's asked a question or when he's presenting a tattva, when he's presenting a fact or a premise of bhakti. So he cannot give convincing arguments for that. Okay. In terms of behavior, he understands his or her limits, right? And he's able, as I said, he or she can distinguish. Okay, is the question, let's say that person is giving a class, is the question that is being asked in the class, is it from an envious perspective? Is it a genuine question? Or it's just been asked to sound condescending towards the speaker, towards me? So that person understands it. Okay, the person, and then if he or she doesn't know the answer, they admit it, right? So these are the qualities of a Madhyam Adhikari. And how do we reciprocate to such people? And that's the second line of the verse. Dikshasti chet pranati bhishcha bhajana mission. So people, these Madhyam Adhikaris, and we'll go through the initiation process in the next slide. But so these are Dikshasti, they have taken Diksha, Madhyam Adhikaris. And so we are paying obeisances to them, we bow down to them. Okay? And you can refer to the Shastric evidence there, Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila. Okay, then comes Uttam Adhikari. Uttam Adhikari is one whose Shraddha is unbreakable. He can convince anyone of bhakti. And Acharya Srila Prabhupada is an example of that. If I go and interact with people who are entrenched in who are ensconced in Maya, they are doing all the breaking all the regulatory principles, I will get affected by them. I might also fall down. But on the contrary, an Uttam Adhikari like Prabhupada, he can pull those people out of their condition and make them pure devotees. That's the quality of an Uttam Adhikari. So his or her Shraddha is unbreakable. The level of purity that person has, the level of potency that person has, can convince anybody that the value of bhakti. And that's we see in Prabhupada. And not just Prabhupada, we see it in so many of Prabhupada disciples and other senior devotees. The self-concept for an Uttam Adhikari is that he cannot, the Uttam Adhikari is so humble that he or she thinks that except me, everybody is a devotee. Right? So that's the quality of an Uttam Adhikari. Right? He or she sees, because he or she is so humble that they feel that I have so many bad qualities, but here I see that there is God sitting in everybody's heart. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is that verse which says that Stavara Jangama Dekhe Na Dekhe Taramurti. That this person doesn't see anything that's moving, immovable, or whether it's a idol, it's a deity. He doesn't see that. Sarvatra hai Nija Ishta Deva Spurti. He says that Nija Ishta Deva Spurti, that he sees his God's, Krishna's Spurti, energy in everybody. So that's the quality of a Uttam Adhikari. Okay. So that's his concept, self-concept. Okay. So we have the example of Prahlad coming from Bhagavatam, right? When Hiranyakashipu asked Prahlad, okay, where is your God? He said everywhere. So pure devotee sees God everywhere. And Hiranyakashipu couldn't understand that. Why? Because he's not a devotee. So, and how does an Uttam Adhikari reach that platform? What is his mindset? We see that teenage girls and boys, when they fall in love, they get so ensconced by it, they get so attracted to each other that they just forget whatever is happening around them. We see that so often, right? So that similarly, such a pure devotee has that kind of an affection and love for Krishna. Yuvati nam yatha yunam, yunam charivata yatha. That just like a boy and girl, teenage boy and girls, they fall in love. Similarly, a pure devotee falls in love with Krishna. That's his level of his devotion to Krishna. And his chanting is, there's a Shuddhana. It's completely pure. He's practically relishing Krishna in his chanting. His Abhinatva Nama Namina. He can feel that Krishna is not different from the name. He has a taste for that name. He or she has a taste for that name. And he's just so much into that bhakti process. So that's the quality of an Uttam Adhikari. So when it comes to looking at deities, he sees deities everywhere. He sees the Lord everywhere. So he's not just in the temple. He sees everywhere. In the 5th chapter, the verse gives, right, Brahmane Gavi Hastini Suni Chaiva Supakicha Pandita Samadarshina, because he sees Krishna in everybody's heart. So an animal, a dog eater, or any sage, anybody. When he deals with devotees, such an Uttam Adhikari, he sees that he himself is the servant of the servant of a servant. Das Anudas, as Mahaprabhu has taught us. Gopi Bhartur Padakamaleo Das Anudas. Now, dealing with innocent and envious people, a pure devotee does not discriminate between such people. He knows, he sees Krishna in everybody. So there is no thought of discriminating. Oh, this is innocent, this is envious. Now, an important part is that his or her preaching activities. Now, at an Uttam Adhikari thinks that everybody is a devotee. So there is nothing to preach, right? There's nobody to preach to if he sees everybody as a devotee. So an Uttam Adhikari comes down to the level of a Madhyam Adhikari just for the benefit of people. And then he or she preaches. Right? And we'll see that once again in Prabhupada's case. Prabhupada being an Uttam Adhikari, but still he would come down to a level of Madhyam Adhikari for the benefit of people like me, people like us. And Prabhupada would never show his ecstatic emotions anytime, even though he was at the level of Uttam Adhikari. his heart was filled with love for Krishna. He had everything in his heart, the acharyas, Krishna, all the spiritual world and potency in his heart. But he never exhibited those ecstatic emotions because he was coming down to a level for the benefit of people in general. That's the quality of a pure devotee, of an Uttam Adhikari. Once Prabhupada was taking a walk in a park. He used to take morning walks, and he saw some old gentlemen playing golf. And Prabhupada was not aware of that game. In India, nobody played golf. So he just asked his disciples, what are these people doing? And his disciple explained to him that these people have now, they're 60, 70-year-old, they have lived their lives, they have retired, and now they're playing golf. It's a game called golf. And Prabhupada started crying. The reason being, Prabhupada said, just look at them. They have spent their entire lives running after money, and now that they have time, they're wasting it in hitting a ball around in a big field. And Prabhupada was literally crying for that. So that's the quality of a pure devotee. That's the quality of an Uttam Adhikari. Right? That he sees that everybody is suffering. Atmavapena sarvatra samam pashyati jo Arjuna. Sixth chapter, Krishna explains that the pure topmost yogi is the one who can see that other people are suffering in this world. Srila Prabhupada, he went and sat in the Tompkins Square Park and he started chanting. Why? Because he could see that the people are suffering. There are people who are dull-headed, who are completely ignorant, right? And those people were in ecstasy when they heard Prabhupada. That's the quality of a pure devotee. He's an expert in serving Krishna, bhajan vigya, and then he's nindadi shunya. He has no envy in his heart for anybody. So that's the beauty of a pure devotee. Okay, and how do we reciprocate such a devotee? Shushrushraya, we serve that devotee. Right? Bhagavad Gita, that fourth chapter, that there's a verse 434 which gives the three qualities. That how do we serve? How do we approach such a devotee? Pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshini. So then the Shastric evidence, please look at those two verses, 11.2, 45 Bhagavatam, and then Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 16.74. Okay, so these are the three levels of the devotees. Okay, and I'll take a pause here and see if anybody has any questions before we jump on to the process of initiation.
Would you explain the chanting part for the Madhyama Adhikari and the Uttama Adhikari? Maybe you don't understand.
So,
The chanting of Madhya.
Yeah, so each step of those three, Namabhas, Namaprad, Namabhas, and Shuddhanam. Okay, so these three, they are. So Krishna is not different from his name. That's something we know, right? So Nam Namakadi Bhauda is a Sarva Shakti. That's his internal potency. It's his potency is present completely in his name. So the name is pure. But how do I approach it differs, right? So Krishna is a person. He's not static or void.
Yes.
He's going to reciprocate according to my devotion. Right? Krishna is omnipresent. He's omnipotent. He knows everything. But we need to recognize that whatever is manifested to us is based on Krishna, not just on Krishna's potency, but also on our receptivity. So look, let me give you an example. Let's say, think of all the aparads that are coming to me as thieves coming to steal something from me. Okay, at a Namaprad stage, all I have is a toy gun. So I can show the toy gun to those thieves. A couple of them might get scared, but then generally it won't do much help to me. So that's Namaprad stage. That I don't have the tools, I don't have that potency, that purity, I don't have the devotion in my heart yet, and that Shraddha is not there. So because of that, my chanting is not getting rid of my anarthas, which is the purpose of chanting, purification. So that's the Nama Aparad stage. Namabhas. Now consider Namabhas stage as a rifle that you have, in which you have to put a bullet. Every time you shoot, you have to put a new bullet. So it's a very tedious process. But still, you have a gun with a bullet. So now you will be able to push away many more anarthas. So once again, so our purity, our Shraddha has come to a level where now I have a gun that has actually a bullet, but it's not perfect. It might not scare away all the thieves that are approaching me, all the anartha that are approaching me. So that's the Nama Bha stage. But still, I have a gun with a bullet, so I am able to push away many of those thieves. So I'm relishing the benefit of that gun in my hand. So then comes the Shuddha-naṁ stage. Now consider Shuddha-naṁ stage as an automatic machine gun, something like AK-47 that you have, and you can just shoot it at non-stop for 15-20 minutes. So all the anarthas will be gone. So that is the pure stage of our Shraddha. That has come to a point where no anartha can come close to me because I'm chanting with that intensity, that purity, and I'm getting that reciprocity from Krishna for that. So those are the three stages. So that's something we have to understand. The word aparadh means, it has the word Radha in it, aparadha. So that which takes us away from Radha, or the divine energy of Krishna. That is why it's called aparadh. So my consciousness has taken me far off from Krishna. I've been doing it for millennia, but then if I try to redirect my consciousness towards Krishna, then Krishna starts reciprocating. And slowly, now going back to the analogy of the sun, when I start, it's very dark outside. I keep practicing, I don't give up. And then a time comes, we talked about the story of the Garuda and the sparrow. Yes. The sparrow didn't have any power of her own, but just her sincerity was more than enough to attract Garuda. So similarly, when we just keep chanting, we keep putting in the time, the effort, and sincerity, then Krishna intervenes, and then the sun starts coming out. And then we start able to see light, our aparadha go away, then there's bright sun, all our aparadha gone, and then we are pure, and then we are ready to go back home, back to God. Was that helpful, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you so much.
Okay.
Yes.
Welcome, Mataji. And the thing is that all of us have it within us to reach to that stage of Shuddha-naṁ. The only thing missing is the sincerity part, which we develop as we keep going. The faith builds. Faith is also a exercise like we go to the gym, right? So I can't just pick up 80 pounds on day one. I start with 20, next day it becomes 40. Similarly, faith happens. The faith builds over time. Bhakti is a very organic process. It has to happen because that is my true nature. So I know it has to happen. So, but it takes time. Cleaning a dirty house will take time, but then it'll come. So we all have that capability to reach that stage. Okay, so coming to process of initiation. Okay, the process of initiation, Prabhupada quotes two verses in his purport. The first one is, the process by which a devotee becomes attached to Krishna is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya Leela 4, chapter 192 verse. Diksha kale bhakta kare atma samarpan, se kale Krishna tare kare atma sama. At the time of initiation, when a devotee fully surrenders to the service of the Lord, Krishna accepts him to be as good as he himself. Diksha or spiritual initiation is explained in the Bhakti Sandarbha, verse 868 by Srila Jiva Goswami. Divyam Jnanam Yato Dadyat Kuryat Papaste Sankshayam Tasmat Diksheti Sa Prokta Deshikesh Tattva Kovide. By Diksha, one gradually becomes disinterested in material enjoyment and gradually becomes interested in spiritual life. Now, one thing to I wouldn't say it as a general statement, but it's most of the time that's true. When Prabhupada or when the Shastras talk of initiation, they're talking of the Brahman initiation. That's one thing just to keep in mind. It's not, and I'll go over these 5 different stages of initiation steps, the Pancha Samskar that we have to go through. But generally, that's it. That whenever initiation is being talked about, it's mostly about the Brahman initiation that we go through. Okay. So any sampradaya has these 5 steps to Diksha that we have in here. Okay, and there is a very good article that Bhakti Vinod Thakur wrote in his he used to publish a magazine called Sajjana Toshni. He wrote a very good article on this Pancha Samskar, and I can share that later on. So this is coming from there. So Tapa Pundram Tatha Namo Mantro Yaggascha Panchama amihi pancha samskara parame kanti hetava. Tapa, Pundra, Nama, Mantra, and Yaga. These 5 items comprise Pancha Samskar. They are the cause of intense devotion to Lord Hari. So that's the those are the 5 steps of Diksha. So let's look at these. So Tapa, what is Tapa in our lives? That's the 4 regulative principles we are asked to follow. What is Pundra? Pundra is the tilak that we put on our head. Then comes Nam. So Nam is the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra that our spiritual master officially puts us in. And then is Mantra. So Mantra is the Gayatri mantra that the spiritual master gives at the time of Brahman initiation. And Yaga. Yaga is it's a deity worship. So this entire process is called Diksha. So the first 3 are Harinam Diksha, and the last 2 are topmost are Brahman Diksha. Now, in general, some sampradayas might have all 5 of them together. So a person would probably be getting all 5 of them together. Prabhupada split it in ISKCON because in today's world, I'm so degraded that it's hard for me to even grasp the concept of bhakti. And then Prabhupada had come to this country, and it was very hard for him. So he had to divide it. So he divided the Harinam Diksha and Brahman Diksha. Generally, in many sampradayas, they could have a Brahman Diksha right away. So that could be it. So there's a different problem. But then Prabhupada split it in ISKCON. So first do the first 3. Do the first 3. You have the 4 regulative principles. You are decorating yourself with the tilak, and then you are chanting. And if you're doing it well, then the last 2 will be given to you. Right? So when we get the Harinam Diksha, we become a representative of the Hare Krishna movement. We become a member of Krishna's family. And then we become a member of the Parampara. Right? So right now we all are being trained. Right? So when we are being trained, and then later on we'll get a permanent job. That's the way to think about it. But the thing to keep in mind is that even if you're chanting and you've not been initiated, the chanting doesn't get lost anywhere. It has its full potency. It has its full power. Right? In principle, chanting is powerful enough for us for our purification. But we have to understand that chanting is a process, is a part of a process. And that process is meant to purify us. And that when we are walking on that process, so to develop that love of God, we need examples of those who have walked that path before, who have developed the love of Godhead. That is why we come into the process, we take an initiation from a spiritual master. We put in our commitment there. So I just wanted to clarify that. It doesn't mean that if you're not initiated, then your chanting is going to waste or anything of that. So we have to, but we need people to show us the path. That's why we have to commit to us a spiritual master. So that's the purpose we have Diksha in the whole process, right? So and then also, as I quoted a verse earlier, right, that Name Bhakta Jana Partha, that Krishna says that who are my devotees are not my devotees are the ones who follow me. So Krishna himself is asking us to follow devotees. So Krishna gives mercy through those who spread his message, right? So that's why we need to be in that process, right? So we need training, guidance, and all that comes from the spiritual master whom we approach for initiation. Even when we'll come to Nectar of Devotion, we will see that there are 64 principles to devotion, and out of the 64 principles, Rupa Goswami quotes the top 5 are related to a guru. Okay? And I just wanted to bring this up because whatever Prabhupada has given us, it's not based on it's not something that he pulled out of a hat a day before coming to America. Many people, I have personally met people who tell me that, Prabhupada, he just fabricated a lot of principles and philosophies and which don't have an established premise in the scriptures or Vedas. But that's not true. So, that's why last week we talked about impersonalism and Mayavad, and, we have scripture reference for that. And today we're talking about Diksha and, Harinam and Mantra Diksha. Everything is coming from Vedas. Prabhupada is not creating anything out. The beauty is that Prabhupada made it so easy for us that we can practice it on a day-to-day basis. That's the beauty that Prabhupada did. So whatever Prabhupada has given us, it's not been fabricated by him. It's being corroborated by Puranas, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and whatnot. And so, and then the that other thing is that whatever there is need for us to know to go back home, back to Godhead, Prabhupada has given in his books. So that's why I sometimes bring in these scriptural references so that we know that. I also get, start thinking that, oh, where is Prabhupada talking from in this particular purport? And so just to, reinvest in my faith, reestablish my faith, is good for me to keep these principles top of my mind. So, so that's those are the 5 steps of Diksha. And I said, I'll send you that document, the Panch Sanskara. You can read it. It has a lot of good information by Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and you can get more information. And frankly, all sampradayas have that. The Ramanuja Sampradaya, or is it the Sri Sampradaya? So it's the Ramanuja Sampradaya. No, it's the Sri Sampradaya. Is it the Sri? I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. So there is one Sampradaya where they actually put the mark of Vishnu, that is, I think, the conch shell and the lotus. They literally they stamp it on your body. I know many devotees who have it stamped on. They stamped in the sense that they have it, that metal, right? You heat it and then you just put it on your skin, that it remains there forever. So that kind of a stamp within there. So so all script, all sampradayas, different sampradayas have different ways of putting it. For us, Mahaprabhu has given putting the chandan and tilak, and that is the pundra for us. Okay, so that's about the process of initiation which Prabhupada is establishing and giving us. Then, okay, so now there are last 3. Let me see. Yeah, okay. So the last 3 verses, the last 3 paragraphs of Prabhupada's purport, they are more about how to behave after, Diksha, or what to expect, or what is the expectations from my seniors, from my guru for me. So that Prabhupada gives in the last 3 purports, in the last 3 paragraphs of his purport. So unless one faithfully chants the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Krishna does not reveal himself. So going back to the concept of faithfully, so faithfully is that we talked about a strict, sincere, and serious in our approach. So strict, serious, and sincere. So those are the 3 things that we have to exhibit. And another aspect of being faithful in this process is that we have integrity. Even if nobody is looking at me, I am still faithful to the process. I'm doing my sadhana regularly. I'm not giving it up. I'm not a show bottle devotee. So that means faithful. And when we go with that faith, when we go with that strict, sincere, and serious sadhana, even if we make lousy decisions, it makes us stronger, because our aim is Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada is highlighting that unless one faithfully chants, so this faith here, what Prabhupada is highlighting is the sincerity that we need to have in bhakti. Irrespective of at whichever stage I might be a Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttam Adhikari, either one of them. But then, as long as I'm very sincere to my process, then the Supreme Lord reveals himself to the devotee. Okay. The second last paragraph, where Prabhupada is talking about, when a person realizes himself to be an eternal servitor of Krishna, he loses interest in everything but Krishna's service. So, as we grow in our bhakti and we realize that we are Krishna's servants, eternal servitors of Krishna, then all the sloths that I have accumulated over life after life, they get washed off as I move forward in my bhakti. And I get cleaner and cleaner. My purification happens. Cheto darpana marjanam. Mahaprabhu gives in the Sikshashtakam. Cheto darpana marjanam. Bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam. That the mahadavagni nirvapanam, the eternal fire that's been burning and that I've been burning in, it gets diminished. And my cheto darpana marjanam. So cheta is my psychological consciousness that gets cleaned up, which includes, my mind, intelligence, my ego. They all get cleaned up, and then I become a servant of Krishna. However, one should not imitate the behavior of an advanced devotee or Mahabhagavat without being self-realized, for by such imitation one will eventually become degraded. So, Prabhupada is clearly warning us not to imitate anybody. Right? So, there was once a devotee of Prabhupada, disciple of Prabhupada. When Prabhupada took his disciples to Mayapur for the first time, and then this Prabhupada's disciples came to know that there are so many other Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradayas coming from his spiritual master that are also doing bhakti, and obviously a mind would want to go and explore that. And so one devotee, he went and started interacting with other Gaudiya Vaishnavas in Mayapur, and then he got that impression that Prabhupada has lowered the standards of bhakti for us. He's lowered it. So what that devotee started doing was he started chanting 192 rounds every day, sitting near Jalangi river. And he would also criticize other devotees that you are not chanting. Chanting is the ultimate purificatory process. You should be chanting. And the whole day he would just sit in front of on Jalangi river and he would chant. So then the devotee was he came to meet Prabhupada. And then he started instructing Prabhupada also. That Prabhupada, you should establish more austere standards for ISKCON. You have set a very low standards. 16 rounds is nothing. We won't go back to Godhead. And then, so you chant more and whatnot and so on and so forth. And then what happened after that? After a few days, he was not seen anywhere. He disappeared. And then after many, many years, after a few decades, somebody found that devotee working on a gas station as an attendant. And then, so at that point, he had given up the whole process. And that's what happens in bhakti. If we try to imitate and not follow, the process of imitation is merely superficial. It's just on a bodily level. We have the example of Pondraka that comes in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Pondraka would dress himself completely like Krishna, peacock feather in his crown, those yellow colored dress, and he would have a flute. The only thing he didn't have was the chakra, Krishna's, the Sudarshan chakra. And he would blaspheme Krishna that, you took away my chakra, you stole it, I am the true Krishna, you're just an imposter. Give me back the chakra. And Krishna gave him the chakra, and the chakra went and cut off his head. So that's what happens when we imitate. But when we follow, it becomes a completely different process. Following is recommended across Shastras. Srimad Bhagavatam says that in the first canto, second chapter, Sukadeva Goswami tells us that. Bhejiriya Muno Thagre Bhagwantam Adokshajam Sattvam Vishuddha Shemaya Kalpante Tanu Taniha. That just by following devotees who have walked this path, we will be liberated. That assurance is given to us just by following that path. That's all we have to do. No mind games, no fancy tricks, nothing. All we need to do is follow the pure devotees. And then we will be able to cross over this ocean of nescience. And analogically, it's told that when we follow a pure devotee, what do the pure devotees do when they themselves cross this ocean? They leave the boat back for us to get onto the boat and cross the river of this material existence. But what's more is that the entire ocean shrinks to the size of water in the hoof print of a calf, which is going to be something like this probably. So analogically speaking, that's what happens when we follow a pure devotee. Not imitate, just follow. In surrendering. No, I'm yours, you show me a path, I will put my entire sincerity towards this path. I might not be able to come to a level of purity this life, might not be, but my sincerity is fully there. And that itself pleases Prabhupada, that itself pleases Guru, and then they interfere, and then the entire ocean shrinks down to a hoof print of a calf, the water in the hoof print of a calf. Go Vatsapadam. This is called a Go Vatsapadam. So Prabhupada is warning us that we should not imitate. the other devotees, other seniors, or like I gave the example of that person. He was imitating other Vaishnavas he found at the other Gaudiya mutts. But they might be at a different level. We don't know. That's why Prabhupada is asking us to discriminate. We should know who stands where, who is supposed to be followed, who is supposed to be ignored, who is supposed to be respected from a distance. Otherwise, we will always fail, we will hurt our bhakti. That's the message that Prabhupada is giving us in this. That's the second last paragraph in the purport. The last paragraph of the purport: one should not become a spiritual master unless he has attained the platform of Uttamadhikari. Uttamadhikari is a pure devotee. His Shraddha is rock solid. Nobody can shake it up. And then, in addition to that, under his belt, he has the knowledge of the Shastras to answer convincingly and also respond appropriately to people who might be coming in a mode of challenge to that person. So he or she has that power. So he or she is capable of becoming an Uttamadhikari and becoming a spiritual master. And we read that in the first verse. Vacho vegam, mansa krodh vegam, jibva vegam, udaropastha vegam. Etan vegan yuvishaheta dhira, sarvam apiman prithvim cha shishyat. That a person who has controlled all those 6 vegas is he can go ahead and have disciples all over the world. A very important point Prabhupada brings out is that a neophyte Vaishnava or a Vaishnava situated on the intermediate platform can also accept disciples. But such disciples must be on the same platform, and it should be understood that they cannot advance very well toward the ultimate goal of life under his insufficient guidance. Well, what Prabhupada is explaining us here is that sometimes you might see that a Madhyamadhikari could also become a initiating guru. But Prabhupada is saying such disciples must be on the same platform. What Prabhupada is meaning is that you cannot expect a school-going kid to start instructing a college-going kid or probably a person who's doing his PhD. A 10th grader, he can teach the 2nd and 3rd graders, but he cannot teach the people who are in the master's program. So what Prabhupada is saying is that a school-going kid can teach school-going kids. Yeah, so they are on the same platform. Yeah, so a 10th grader can teach a 2nd or 3rd grader, but then it has to be understood that they are not that advanced that they can take full responsibility of that person to take him or her back home, back to God. That's why Prabhupada is calling that guidance is insufficient. That's something to understand there. The guidance is insufficient. So you might see that sometimes it happens that such people, there are people who might not look like that they have the 6 vegas under control, but they still can become spiritual masters. So this is what I had. No, well, we wrapped up much earlier than regular 8:06. One thing I just wanted to add was in regards to Harinam Diksha. So I mentioned, right, that when we get the Harinam Diksha, so we are now pushed into the process. Now we are in a training mode, right? And even with that Harinam Diksha, so I mentioned that even without Diksha, any Diksha, we are still ready to go back home, back to Godhead. But then also a person who is at a level of an Harinam Diksha, he or she is also ready to go back home, back to Godhead. Going back to the same concept, the chanting is pure itself. Golokera Prema Dhana, Harinam Sankirtana. Narottam Das Thakur sings in one of his songs. So the Golokera Prema Dhana, Harinam Sankirtana. So that's the love coming from the spiritual world. So, but then the reason Prabhupada wanted to establish and give Brahman initiations to people was because as a Brahman initiated people, we have to exhibit some qualities. Bhagavad Gita gives the qualities of a Brahman. Samo, Damo, Sama, Dama, Tapa, Shaucham. And there are other words. So Sama, Dama, Tapa, Shaucham, cleanliness, austerity, so those qualities are there. So that makes one a good teacher. So Brahman, we need, right? Brahmans are, what are the qualities of Brahman? Yajan, Yajan, Patan, Patan. So they can do Patan, Patan. They can read, they can understand, and they can also tell others and explain it to others. They can share the realizations in a way that it becomes understandable to other people. So that's the purpose why Prabhupada wanted us to have Brahman initiation in the movement. Then Brahman initiated disciples, people can also do deity worship. That's one requirement, to go in the altar and serve the deities. That he or she should be initiated, a Brahman initiated disciple. Because when we go to do deity worship, the quality of shaucham of a Brahmana is being utilized there. When I'm going for deity worship, I have to be clean. And then also the Brahman initiation, your guru gives Gayatri mantra to his disciple. And there are other mantras, there are 7 mantras in total. The Gayatri mantra, it catapults our consciousness into the mode of goodness immediately. And coming from a spiritual master, coming through the parampara, the potency is there in that mantra. So then when that is given to a disciple, his or her consciousness becomes in the mode of goodness, and he or she becomes a very staunch practitioner, and also a teacher, a deity worshipper, and he can serve deities. So no diksha, chanting still helps. Chanting can still take you back to Godhead, but you need initiation. Why? Because we need people whom we can follow. We need examples. Harinam Diksha, still we can go back to Godhead. Nobody is stopping us. But Prabhupada wanted us to take Brahman Diksha because it expedites the whole process. It pushes us into a mode of goodness, and then our bhakti becomes more and more serious. So all of those are very important for us. All those steps. We are not Brahmas by birth. As Prabhupada has told us, Kalo Shudre Sambhava. In Kali Yuga, everybody is a Shudra. Because we are born without any of the samskaras. There are 9 samskaras that are told, right? There's Garbhadan Sanskar, Anna Sanskar, that hair cutting ceremony, a lot of this. So there are 9 sanskaras that a person has to go through. But because we don't go through, we are born as Shudras. Right? So there's a story of Aditi and Kardama Muni. Aditi, grew lusty and approached Kardama Muni. Kardama Muni said, not a good time. But still she was lusty. And then who was born? Hiranyaksh and Hiranyakashipu. That's what happens when we don't follow the proper samskaras. And that's why we are not Brahmanas by birth. Nobody's a Brahmana by birth. I might have been born in a Brahman family, but I am a Shudra. Technically, in the society, somebody can say, oh yes, you are a Brahman, but then I'm not a Brahmana. Okay, so that's all I think is the last slide. Yep, that's the last slide. Okay, so we are at 8:11. So any questions? If not, we can even wrap up early today. That's good. Save 20 minutes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, just a question. So you mentioned 2 Prabhupada ji, he mentioned like 2 Brahman Diksha and Harinam Diksha. So I heard some Prabhuji, they say they got through 2 initiation. Does that mean they went through Brahman as well as Harinam?
Yes.
Yes, Prabhu. That's what it means. So do you have Tapa Pundra Nama? So Nama is the Harinam.
Okay.
So you have got the Harinam Diksha. And then the mantra means the Gayatri mantra.
Okay.
That's the Brahmana Diksha.
All right.
And within ISKCON, spiritual masters, it's up to the spiritual master when he or she feels that the disciple is ready for Brahman Diksha.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, as I said, whatever Prabhupada has given us is fully based on Shastra. It's rock solid. The beauty is that Prabhupada made it so easy that anybody can take it home and practice bhakti and go back to God. Nobody, no acharya in the history of mankind has ever done that. So we are deeply indebted to Prabhupada for doing this for us. Nobody had made it so simple that practically you can take it home and just do it by yourself, and you're ready to go back to God. Okay, anything else?
So Prabhuji,
Okay, go ahead, Mataji.
no, Prabhuji, you go ahead.
No, just a quick question. What was the meaning of the Pundra, Prabhu?
Pundra is tilak, Prabhu. We put tilak, right? We put 12 places on our body.
Okay.
For us, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave this, the clay that we get from Vrindavan and
Right. And,
in
and
some,
the difference between nama and japa, what's the difference there?
nama and mantra, you mean, or nama and yaga? You mean?
Japa is Sankirtan, right?
So japa is Prabhu. So the chanting of the holy name, it's not dependent on any of these dikshas. Even if you are not a diksha initiated, you can still chant. This nama is just that you are officially being initiated into the process by your spiritual master. Right? The word initiation means you are initiating something, you are starting it. So your spiritual master officially, it's like very much like when you go to college, right? So when you take enrollment in your college, you might have to get your documents done. So many people signed on it, but then there is a dean who makes that final signature. So that is your spiritual master. He's making that final signature. So that's the nama concept that's coming in. That now you're officially into the college now.
Right. So then japa should not be under that category, Harinam Diksha. I mean, it could be, but it could also be outside of it also.
So
You see
japa,
what I'm-
Prabhu, japa is anybody can do japa. Nobody's
Right. But you have it categorized under Harinam Diksha.
that is
Nama,
very much like an official, right? When you get initiated, our spiritual master, he chants on the beads and then he gives us the bead. So he's just like he's putting his stamp on that process that you have been following even before that initiation. That's all he's doing. He's putting a stamp. Okay, now you are chanting. Now you have been chanting for the past year, doing your 16 rounds. Now you're officially into that process, and he gives you the beads after he has chanted on them, and then you have the 4 regulatory principles. So japa is not a part of any of this diksha. Japa is something you can do before,
right.
after. Yeah.
So it was just that it was categorized under Harinam Diksha, but it could have easily been also outside of that category, because one can.
Yeah. This nama is specifically about officiating the process. That's all it is there for. Because as I was saying, right, your spiritual master gives you the beads, and then you're officially taking a vow to do 16 rounds. So that is just making it a commitment now. You're making an official commitment. That's why the nama process has to be there.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome. Any other questions? So I'm done here. If anybody wants to leave, please feel free. We're done here for the chapter or with the verse. And so if you don't have any questions, you can leave. If you have questions, I'm still here till 7:30. Sorry, 8:30. Another 15 minutes. So happy to answer any questions if you have.
So Prabhuji, with this Brahman Diksha, so do we have is there a qualification that he has to have a good knowledge of Shastras? And he should be, as a Brahmin quality, he should be able to have a good answer and a convincing answer to any devotee who asks him something. And for that, he should have a good hold on the Shastra, right? Yet you said Yajan, Yajan, Patan, Patan, right? So it's not.
Yeah. So who's a Brahman? Brahman has qualities. It's more at the choice of the spiritual master. It's not a requirement for you to know the Shastras, then only your spiritual master will give you Brahman Diksha. That is the criteria. The qualities, yes. So right. So the qualities can be many, but then the Brahman might be expert in one of them. I said Yajan, Patan. Yajan means he also does yagya. He's expert at fire sacrifices. Devotees might be expert in deity worship. I know there are so many devotees who who are very much attracted to deity worship. They might not be so much in Shastra.
Yeah.
But then their spiritual master could see that purity, could see that desire to serve Krishna, and he or she gives them Brahman initiation. So the word Brahman Diksha doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a Brahman. You have to have all the qualities that of a Brahman as given in Bhagavad Gita or other Shastras.
Got it. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.